Welcome to Chapter 4, How We Use Language. In Chapter 4, we're going to talk about the nature of language, what language is, how is it, what does it mean, how do we use it, appreciating the power of words, ways we use and abuse language, and improving your use of language. The nature of language. So language is symbolic, and what that just means is that words mean things. Words have ideas behind them, or a meaning, or a picture behind them, but they each term means something. Language is usually arbitrary and or ambiguous. So words might mean more than one thing. It might just depend on the situation. But some words have literal meanings, or it depends on like the context clues of the conversation. And then some words might mean something else. Okay, so the nature of language continues. So language is governed by these 4 rules. So phonological rules are like the way words sound if you're enunciating or pronouncing all of the syllables in a word. So for some people, they will say comfortable, and other people will say comfortable, because that's technically how you should say it. But I usually just say comfortable. So syntactic rules are rules that govern the order of words and phrases. So for us, we put the adjective before the noun. So we would say red car. However, in different languages, like one of them being Spanish, they would say car red. So that's just their rules for it. So it just depends which language you're speaking. And then we have semantic rules. And those specify the meanings of individual words. So the example I use in the book is lawyer, and we know lawyer is like the same as an attorney. So we basically have certain meanings for words, and we could have more than one word that means the same thing, or a word that means various things. And then we have pragmatic rules, and those specify the implications or interpretations of statements. So if you ask me like, how are you doing today? And I say, I'm great, then you'd be like, okay, she's happy. But if my reply is, I'm great, then you would think, okay, well, maybe she has something going on. So the pragmatic rules kind of like let you know what's really going on. Okay, so language has many different layers, many different meanings. It depends on the context. It depends on what's being said. It depends on how someone's saying something. So we have denotative meanings and connotative. So denotative is exactly what a word means. So the example in the book is about house and home, things like that, like as the example. So for home, for some people, might actually mean like a house. That's what you picture in your mind. But for some people, home means like family, love, spending time together, sharing a meal. So that would be the connotative meaning. Okay, so this is a semantic triangle, and if you remember, semantic means like the meanings of individual words. So you might have the word home, and then for referent, you would actually picture a house. But the word home could also symbolize something different, and that would be like family. So they're sharing a meal. Okay, so some words have loaded language that could be positive or negative. So if someone says like love, for a lot of people it can mean like really good, or for other people it can mean something painful. Other loaded words that they have on here are cancer. Just hearing that word frightens a lot of people. Family, it can mean like love, togetherness, or some people could not have had a family and they feel some emptiness. Bailout, as far as getting out of jail or helping someone out. Freedom. These are certain words like the Holocaust, slavery. Those are terms language can be ambiguous, and that just means that it's not fully clear, like when someone's speaking. So, for instance, something can be more abstract. I could say, could you hand me that book? You might turn around and see like 5 books, so you're wondering, well, which book is she talking about? Or I could say, could you hand me the book with a pink cover that's laying on the desk? So that way you'll know, oh, okay, this is the exact book she wants. So concrete is something that's more exact, and abstract could mean multiple things. So this ladder is just another way of explaining the last slide. So they have living being at the bottom, and that's something that's more abstract. It can mean multiple things. And then if you get toward the top, it talks about the sister Julie, or a female, and that's more concrete because you know exactly what we're talking about, versus before, living things could be animals, primates, humans, all of that. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis basically states that language shapes the way we view things, the way we perceive things, the way we understand things, and linguistic determinism is part of that, and so is linguistic relativity. So linguistic determinism suggests that the structure of language determines how we think. So the way people mix words together, the way they might say something determines how we think. And then linguistic relativity suggests that because language determines our perceptions of reality, people see the world differently depending on which language they speak. Appreciating the power of words. So language expresses who we are. Our names define us and tell people things about us. Sometimes we assume things about people based off their names or based off of someone else that we've known with that name. But I think names, honestly, the process I think is really important. For me personally, it's not for everybody. So my name is Dalila. I go by Lily, that's my nickname. But Dalila means gentle in Swahili. And if you knew me, then you would know that that's part of my personality. Language expresses who we are. So credibility is a big thing. People used to say you're only as good as your word. So people were more inclined to tell the truth and be honest in situations. So words give us credibility. So there are several forms of language that can hint or diminish our credibility. So a cliche that can sort of diminish our credibility. So a cliche would be something that like you hear all the time. Like some people say, "Oh, I love you, and I love this, and I love this new person, I love that," and so for you, if once they say that they love you, it's like, well, you love everything. So like, how do I know, how true it is? So cliches are things that are overused. Dialects. So it just depends where you're from, how you say things. So when I would visit Georgia, people would say Coke, but a Coke can mean any type of soda. Well, where I'm from, we say exactly what it is. Like if you want an orange Fanta, then you're gonna say orange Fanta. If you want, I don't drink soda, so I don't really remember all the sodas, but there's like Sprite and there's other types of Sprite. So you would basically say the exact type of drink you would want. Whereas some people just say pop, or they say soda pop or soda. It just depends on your dialect and where you're from. And then we have equivocation, and it's language that disguises the speaker's true intentions through strategic ambiguity. So someone might on purpose say something to kind of get you off the trail of something else. It's more like beating around the bush. You're kind of like, okay, what exactly did you mean about this? Or like, is there more to this story? So you don't really know like if you can fully trust what the person's saying. And then weasel words. So weasel words are terms or phrases intended to mislead listeners by implying something they don't actually say. So the example in the book is that they say 4 out of 5 dentists prefer a certain brand of toothpaste. Well, they're not saying all dentists, so they're just saying like 4 out of the 5 that they brought to the room. So honestly, when it comes to these polls, even when it comes to politics and all this dramatic stuff, if you think that like a poll of this many people approve of this such and such topic, and it's like, well, who took that poll? Like, think about it. Did you take this poll? Do you know anybody who took this poll? Who was part of this poll? And sometimes when they send out, self-reported surveys, like they're sending out to a certain group of people, so like you could slant it to getting the results that you want. Drug companies do that too, to make the results seem greater than what they really are. And then allness statements. I call those speaking in absolutes. I don't like to do that. So that would be someone saying like, I would never react that way in a situation, or you're always bringing up this conversation, and it's just like someone's probably not doing it continuously, which would always. Or I don't know if people should say never when it comes to things, because you don't really know how you might react in a situation unless you're in it. So that's an allness statement. So language can be affectionate. So my son Kai, I call him Honeybee, and he responds to that already. He's been responding to that for a while. But that is like our little relationship. That's just something that I say to him that he knows is just for him, and I say it in an affectionate way. You might call someone honey, sweetie, whatever other nickname you have for someone else, but those would be affectionate words. Language connects us to one another. It also talks about gossip. So you can think of the game telephone, where you tell somebody something and they tell it to someone else and tell it to someone else, and eventually the message gets misconstrued into something else. So it usually happens, but language still connects us, and it's something that's very important to us as humans. Language can also separate us. So there's criticism, and that's when someone's judging you, basically. So there's constructive criticism, where the person is trying to say things to make you better. They're trying to help you out. However, criticism might be just like, oh, those shoes look terrible on you. Like, instead of saying that, you could say, hey, those shoes look like they're a little bit too big. Are they uncomfortable? That would be more like constructive criticism, versus criticism is just like, oh, those shoes are terrible. What are you wearing? And then threats are declarations of the intent to harm somebody. So threatening language, saying you're going to do such and such to somebody, whether it's written online or if you say it to them through text messages or if you say it to their face, that is basically saying that you're going to harm somebody. Okay, so language motivates action. So persuading somebody would be trying to convince them to do something or think something in a certain way. So these are the following strategies as far as persuasion goes: anchor and contrast approach, norm of reciprocity, and social validation principle. So anchor and contrast approach, some people use it when it comes to asking for a raise. So one of the rules of asking for a raise is that you should ask for about 30% of more than what you actually want, because you might not get that. You might, and it'll be great, but you might not, and at least you can get more of a number that you actually could live off of or would benefit you and your family. Another instant is to be like, oh my gosh, for my birthday, I really want to go to Cancun. And then after a little bit, then I could be like, no, like tell my fiance, I don't really want to go to Cancun. I actually just want to go to Vegas. And it's like, okay, so that's actually easier to do. So then I would end up in Vegas. So you're asking for something smaller or asking for something large, and then you actually ask for something smaller because that's what you really want. So norm of reciprocity. So if you do something for somebody, then usually they want to do it like something back for you, like a favor. Because as humans, we like to reciprocate things, and that builds a relationship. So if you give somebody a ride one day, then they might be inclined to give you a ride later, or maybe buy you lunch later. But it also builds friendships and relationships. And then we have the social validation principle, and it's basically stating that like people will comply to things if they believe other people are already doing it. So that's why, like, when it comes to commercials, like a drug commercial, they'll have like people running and happy and just like, oh, we took this new drug and now everything is just great. But basically they're trying to show you that, yeah, you're going to be better if you take this like everyone else, so you might as well just comply and join us. So sometimes with language or communication, we use humor. That's a good way of getting people to connect to you. And then euphemisms can make things that are harsh or terrible not so bad. So instead of saying that, someone died, people might say, well, so-and-so passed away, and it makes it more easier to swallow. And then slang are different words that, depending on where you're from, that you might use to communicate, and they could mean various things. So it kind of just depends where you're from. As I mentioned, I think in the first week, Webster's Dictionary, Oxford's Dictionary, they add lots of slang words to the dictionary, and I actually want you guys to look up some this week to see what is new to you and what is interesting, or maybe some things you've never heard of. It's also interesting to look at the slang words from other countries, just to see like what they are adding, like what's interesting out there. All right, so defamation is language that harms a person's reputation, so it could be libel and slander. If you think of that, usually you'll hear this when it comes to celebrities, because they are their reputation, like their character is their reputation. It also makes them money, so they can sue when it comes to defamation of character or libel or slander when someone is saying negative things about somebody. And usually these things are not true, so that's what that is. And then profanity is vulgar language, cursing, all of that. Hate speech is saying negative things about people or a group of people in order to make them feel bad, to degrade them, treating them as less than, and hate speech is just not okay. It is important to separate opinions from factual claims. So opinions is what somebody thinks. Facts are like actual facts. They're objective. Opinions are subjective. So more ways to improve your language: so speak clearly, speak loud enough for everyone to understand you, but don't yell at them. So speak at an appropriate level, but don't talk over anyone's heads. So that just means that you're saying words or things that people can't fully understand because they're not at your level of expertise in a certain situation. And also don't talk down to people, and that's being condescending and like judging them with your words. You don't want to do either. It's very important to communicate your thoughts and feelings in situations. So I think it's important to use I statements instead of you statements. as the example says, is I'm mad right now, or I feel hurt because, instead of saying, you made me mad, you caused me to feel this way, you caused this reaction to me, it's like, I reacted this way because of the situation, blah, blah, blah. So that way, it makes people feel better, it lets down their defenses. But if you start with you, like pointing your finger at them, then people get defensive and they kind of like don't listen to what you have to say.